I picked up my first Vorak in a market stall on Doroth Station, about 8 years before my posting to Kethavar. An old cassette converter, technically. A translation module someone had stripped out of a decommissioned courier drone and was selling for parts. The vendor had no idea what it was. I didn't either at first. I bought it for 6 credits because the casing was interesting. It took me 3 months to figure out what I had, and another 2 years to get conversational. Vorak isn't a difficult language if you're willing to sit with it. The syntax is layered. They communicate in what linguists call nested assertion, stacks, meaning every statement contains embedded qualifications, ranked by confidence, and the listener is expected to parse all of them simultaneously. It sounds like music when they speak. Complicated music, but music. I found it beautiful. I still do. I mention this because it matters to what happened at Kethavar, and because nobody at the time thought to ask whether the human medic in Bay 3 had any hobbies. Kethavar Joint Observation Station sat at the edge of the Orith Transit Corridor, a neutral posting, technically administered by 3 species including ours. Practically administered by whoever had the most bureaucratic patience that week. I was there as the human medical officer assigned to a rotation of 14 months. The Vorak delegation had arrived 6 weeks before me, team of 7, headed by a senior linguist named Previth Sewer Keth, which translates loosely as Previth of the Sewer academic lineage, tier formal address. He was very particular about the full form of his name. He was very particular about most things. The Vorak believe, with a sincerity I have to admire, even now, that language is cognition. Not a tool for expressing thought, the actual substrate of it. In their framework, the precision and structural complexity of a species' speech maps directly to the complexity of its inner life. It's a coherent theory. It has a long and distinguished academic history among the Vorak. It also happens to be wrong in ways that don't announce themselves until too late. Previth's team had been assigned to conduct a formal linguistic survey of all species present on Kethavar, ours included. This was presented to us as a collaborative academic exercise. What it actually was, I understood about 48 hours into my posting, when I noticed that Previth's team was broadcasting their field notes on a station-wide open channel, rather than a secured research frequency. I want to be charitable here. I genuinely think it was an oversight rather than deliberate rudeness. The Vorak had been using that channel internally for 6 weeks before I arrived, and the thought that anyone else aboard could follow their transmissions, well, that would have required them to first consider it possible. They had spent 6 weeks listening to human speech, and had reached a firm preliminary conclusion, Previth summarized in his Week 7 field note, with the crisp efficiency of a scientist who has already made up his mind. Hypothesis, confirmed at confidence level 4 of 6, he said. And my translation module rendered it faithfully in my earpiece while I was eating a bowl of reconstituted vegetable soup in the medical bay. Human vocalization presents as high-entropy, low-structure signal, surface complexity without syntactic depth. Idiomatic clusters appear to substitute for precision rather than enhance it. Working designation, pre-linguistic noise with social bonding function. I put my spoon down. I picked it back up. Pre-linguistic noise with social bonding function. Turned that over in my mind for a moment. There is a Vorak idiom, ironic, given the circumstances. That translates roughly as, the scholar who mapped the ocean floor from the shore. It means someone who has produced detailed, confident, entirely wrong account of something they studied from a safe distance. I didn't say anything. Neither did Lieutenant Hasso, who was also eating in the bay, and who glanced at me with a look I have come to recognize as, "What?" Now, I shook my head slightly. He went back to his food. Over the following 2 weeks, Previth's field notes came in on that open channel like a slow tide. They were thorough. They were rigorous by his own standards. They were also delivered in the absolute conviction that no one within range could understand a word of them, which gave them a particular quality. The way a person's face changes when they think no one is watching. He documented our use of hedging language, phrases like "I think" and "probably" and "sort of," as evidence of cognitive imprecision, rather than what it actually is, which is calibrated epistemic signaling. He documented our idioms, "bite the bullet," "in the weeds," "to go," as meaningless noise fragments, rather than compressed cultural shorthand that carries enormous amounts of contextual information in very few syllables. He documented our habit of speaking in short sentences and interrupting ourselves as signs of an underdeveloped working memory. He was particularly interested in the phrase, "You know what I mean," which he classified as a terminal acknowledgement of communicative failure. He cited it 17 times across 4 field notes. I kept a log. Not officially, just in a personal file I was already using for a medical vocabulary project. Running notes. Things I thought he'd gotten wrong, and why. It was a long file by the end of week 3. Here is the thing about patience that I think sometimes gets lost. It isn't passivity. It's a considered decision to wait until the moment is actually useful. Lieutenant Hasso asked me twice, in those 2 weeks, whether we should say something. I told him we'd know when it was time. He didn't look entirely convinced. He's a good officer. He has a strong instinct for when a situation is going wrong, and he couldn't tell, in this one, whether we were letting it run on purpose or just letting it run. We were letting it run on purpose. There's a difference. Pravath's final summary came on a Tuesday, station time. He had assembled all 7 weeks of field notes into a formal report, and he read it aloud in the Vorak tradition of communal academic presentation, which meant, per his customs, that he broadcast it so that all members of his team could hear. On the open channel, at station-wide range, I was in the medical bay doing inventory. Hasso was running diagnostics in the adjacent engineering corridor. 2 other crew members were in the common observation deck, visible through the bay's window, playing a card game. I watched them look up as Pravath's voice came over the channel. I watched them look at each other. Pravath's conclusion was structured, as Vorak academic conclusions always are, in 6 nested tiers. The outermost tier, the one with the highest confidence rating, was this: the human species demonstrates functional intelligence through tool use, solving, and spatial reasoning, but its linguistic capacity does not meet the threshold required for what the Vorak classify as deep cognitive integration. Translated out of academic register, it means, they're handy, but they're not really thinking, not the way we do. He closed the transmission with the Vorak formal marker for a completed academic address. It's a short phrase. It means, roughly, the record is sealed. I sat with that for about 4 seconds. Then I pressed the general broadcast key and spoke into the channel, in Vorak, in 3rd tier formal register, which is the tier appropriate for addressing a senior academic from a position of collegial respect. Linguist Pravath Surketh, I said, your survey methodology is thorough, and your documentation is admirably precise. Your conclusion, however, contains an error at the foundational level. You assessed our language's depth from outside it. That is the same as assessing an ocean by watching the surface. I have read all 7 weeks of your field notes, and I believe you have mistaken economy of expression for poverty of thought. I would be glad to discuss this at your convenience. I have some annotated observations that may be of interest. Then I let go of the key. The channel was quiet for what I clocked at 11 seconds. In my experience, 11 seconds of Vorak silence is roughly equivalent to a very loud noise in any other species. Pravath's response came eventually. It was brief, and it was in the 7th tier of Vorak formal register. The tier reserved for situations where no existing protocol quite covers what just happened. It translates approximately as, we will speak, and we did. I won't claim I enjoyed those conversations in the way you might expect, because I didn't, really. Pravath is a serious scholar, and being wrong at that scale was genuinely difficult for him. There wasn't much comedy in it up close. He asked me, in our 3rd meeting, how long I had spoken Vorak. I told him 8 years. He asked why no one had mentioned it. I told him no one had asked. He was quiet again after that. Not 11 seconds this time, just a moment. Then he made a note in his file and closed it, and we moved on to the survey corrections. The revised report classified human language as demonstrating high structural compression with deep, idiomatic encoding, consistent with advanced cognitive integration. It cited my annotations throughout. I thought that was fair.